If God created the universe, who created God? This is one of the most common questions that Christians get asked, and in this video we're going to take a look at it. Many of you will remember that I actually already made this video some years ago, but it was blocked on YouTube on copyright grounds, I think unjustly. I've had a stream of messages from people trying to find it in recent times saying, "What happened to that video about space-time and there was a loaf of bread and there was a little alien in it? I can't see it anywhere." So basically this is me having another go at trying to post it, this time with a copyright disclaimer beforehand, which should hopefully protect it from being taken down again. I should explain in fact that I'm going to play a PBS clip right now which will help us to understand this whole subject. I believe it's valid to use this clip under fair use legislation, and this PBS clip will not just help us understand this question, but a whole raft of theological questions.
This experiment was carried out in 1971 when scientists flew an atomic clock around the world and then compared it to one on the ground. As Einstein predicted, the two clocks no longer agreed. They differed by only a few hundred billionths of a second, but very real proof of motion's effect on the passage of time.
Einstein's theory has been tested again and again and again, and it all hangs together. It really forms the basis for the way we understand much of the way nature works.
These effects, which used to be considered sort of obscure and very small, are very in your face with today's technology.
With the discovery of this unexpected link between space and time, Einstein realized that the two could no longer be thought of as separate things. Instead, space and time are fused together in what came to be called space-time.
Einstein unified the idea of space with the idea of time into this four-dimensional structure called space-time.
And this fusion of space and time would lead Einstein to perhaps the most mind-bending realization of all. The sharp difference we see between past, present, and future may only be an illusion. In our day-to-day lives, we experience time as a continuous flow. But it can also be useful to think of time as a series of snapshots or moments. And everything that happens can be thought of as the unfolding of moment after moment after moment. And if we picture all moments or snapshots lined up, every moment here on Earth, every moment of Earth orbiting the Sun, and every moment throughout the entire universe, we would see every event that has ever happened or will ever happen. Every location in space and each and every moment in time. From the birth of our universe at the Big Bang some 14 billion years ago, to the formation of stars in the Milky Way galaxy, to the creation of Earth 4.5 billion years ago, to the time of the dinosaurs, to events happening on Earth today, like me working in my office. Thinking about space-time like this led Einstein to overturn our everyday picture of past, present, and future. To get a feel for this, you have to think about the seemingly simple concept of now. For me, a list of things that I consider to be happening right now might include the tick of noon on my office clock, my cat just now jumping from the windowsill, things happening far away, like a pigeon in Venice taking flight at this very moment, a meteor just now hitting the moon, and the explosion of a star at the far reaches of the universe. These and all other events that I think are happening at the same moment in time, but in different regions of our universe, make up what I intuitively think of as now. You can picture them as lying on a single slice of space-time. Let's call it a now slice. Common sense would say that you and I and everyone else will agree on what's happening or what exists right now, moment after moment after moment. That is, we would all agree on what lies on a given now slice. But Einstein showed that, strangely, when you take motion into account, this common sense picture of time goes out the window.
You see what I mean? Think of space-time as a loaf of bread. Einstein realized that just as there are different ways to cut a loaf of bread into individual slices, there are different ways to cut space-time into individual now slices. That is, because motion affects the passage of time, someone who's moving will have a different conception of what's happening right now. And so they'll cut the loaf into different now slices. Their slices will be at a different angle.
That person who's moving will tilt the knife, will be carving out these slices at a different angle. They won't be parallel to my slices of time.
To get a feel for the bizarre effect this can have, imagine an alien here in a galaxy 10 billion light years from Earth, and way over there on Earth, the guy at the gas station. Now, if the two are sitting still, not moving in relation to one another, their clocks tick off time at the same rate, and so they share the same now slices, which cut straight across the loaf. But watch what happens if the alien hops on his bike and rides directly away from Earth. Since motion slows the passage of time, their clocks will no longer tick off time at the same rate. And if their clocks no longer agree, their now slices will no longer agree either. The alien's now slice cuts through the loaf differently. It's angled toward the past.
Since the alien is biking at a leisurely pace, his slice is angled to the past by only a minuscule amount. But across such a vast distance, that tiny angle results in a huge difference in time. So what the alien would find on his angled now slice, what he considers is happening right now on Earth, no longer includes our friend at the gas station or even 40 years earlier when our friend was a baby. Amazingly, the alien's now slice has swept back through 200 years of Earth history and now includes events that we consider part of the distant past, like Beethoven finishing the Fifth Symphony.
Even at a relatively slow speed, we can have actually tremendous disagreements on our labeling of now, what happens at the same time, if we're spread out far enough in space.
And if that's not strange enough, the direction you move makes a difference too. Watch what happens when the alien turns around and bikes toward Earth. The alien's new now slice is angled toward the future. And so it includes events that won't happen on Earth for 200 years. Perhaps our friend's great-great-great-granddaughter teleporting from Paris to New York. Once we know that your now can be what I consider the past, or your now can be what I consider the future, and your now is every bit as valid as my now, then we learn that the past must be real. The future must be real. They could be your now. That means past, present, future, all equally real. They all exist.
If you believe the laws of physics, there's just as much reality to the future and the past as there is to the present moment.
The past is not gone, and the future isn't non-existent. Past, the future, and the present are all existing in exactly the same way.
Just as we think of all of space as being out there, we should think of all of time as being out there too. Everything that has ever happened or will happen, it all exists.
From Leonardo da Vinci laying the final brushstroke on the Mona Lisa, to the signing of the Declaration of Independence, to your first day at school, to events that from our perspective are yet to happen, like the first humans landing on Mars. With this bold insight, Einstein shattered one of the most basic concepts of how we experience time. The distinction between past, present, and future, he once said, is only an illusion, however persistent.
Okay, let's unpack what we saw in that video. The very first sentence in the Bible states that in the beginning, God created the heavens and the earth. And from the statement, we get the idea that space and time came into existence at exactly the same moment, and that one can't exist without the other. Now, Albert Einstein came along in the 1900s and confirmed this idea, saying that space and time are inextricably connected. Therefore, we are living within what's known as the space-time continuum, as illustrated in this video. Now, because we live within the space-time continuum, we experience life as a sequence of events with a beginning, a middle, and an end. However, it's wrong to apply that thinking to God, because God doesn't exist within the space-time continuum. You see, in order for God to have created the universe, God must have pre-existed outside of the universe. In a sense, God's a bit like this guy here, and that's just a logical necessity. God exists outside of the entire space-time continuum. In the same way that C.S. Lewis had to pre-exist outside of Narnia in order to create Narnia. In the same way that George Lucas had to pre-exist outside of the Star Wars universe in order to create the Star Wars universe. In the same way that J.R. Tolkien had to pre-exist outside of Middle-earth in order to create Middle-earth, God had to pre-exist outside of the universe in order to create the universe. And that's just a logical necessity. Therefore, God exists outside of space and time. The Bible says, in the beginning, the Word already existed. The Word was with God and the Word was God. He existed in the beginning with God. God created everything through Him, and nothing was created except through Him. So at the beginning of the universe, God already existed in this other realm. Now, often atheists will mock Christians saying, I don't believe in your sky daddy, in your sky wizard, in your grandfather in the sky. As though Christians believe that God exists in the sky somewhere. We don't believe that God exists in the sky or even in outer space. That's far too small a view of God. God exists outside of the entire space-time continuum. He exists in this whole other realm. Now, we don't know what that realm looks like, the physics of it, the science of it. We have no experience of that realm. But being outside of space-time, we know that God is not constrained by space or time. He is, to our human understanding, eternal. He exists in eternity. Therefore, God doesn't require a beginning and a middle and an end. And this is why the Bible often describes God as being eternal or everlasting. Now, this understanding helps us to make sense of many more theological questions. For example, if God is not constrained by space, that makes him omnipresent. He's effectively everywhere in the universe all at once, and not just spatially, but chronologically too. He's in every corner of the universe, but he's also in every moment of the universe, all at once. To God, there is no past, present, and future. Time's just an illusion that we live under because we're within the space-time continuum. But for God, this entire thing is happening in the now. This is why the Bible says, a day is like 1,000 years to the Lord, and 1,000 years like a day. God is witnessing and is present in all of space and time, all at once. And not being constrained by time either, that makes God omniscient. He knows everything that ever has happened, is happening, and ever will happen. And again, to him, it's all happening in the now. Another question we can now answer is, how is God able to prophesy the future? In Isaiah 46:10, God says, only I can tell you the future before it even happens. Everything I plan will come to pass, for I do whatever I wish. And we might ask the question, how are you able to do that, God? And this is indeed one of the unique features of the Bible that sets it apart from every other book. The way it accurately foretells the future centuries before it even happens. I mean, the coming of Jesus was foretold in the Bible for centuries beforehand. Well, God is able to tell us the future because, scientifically speaking, that future already exists. It's already been written. It's as real as today is, as now is.
If you believe the laws of physics, there's just as much reality to the future and the past as there is to the present moment.
The past is not gone, and the future isn't non-existent. Past, the future, and the present are all existing in exactly the same way.
Just as we think of all of space as being out there, we should think of all of time as being out there too.
All of time is already out there. It's already written. The future, although we haven't experienced it yet, is just as real as the present is. And again, because God is outside of the whole space-time continuum, he sees the whole thing happening in the now. That's why he and he alone can tell us what's going to happen in the future, years or centuries in advance. As the Psalms say, you saw me before I was born. Every day of my life was recorded in your book. Every moment was laid out before a single day had passed. Another question that we can now answer is, where did the matter and energy come from to create this whole universe? Remember, that was a question that stumped Simon in Mr. Luby's class. Well, the Bible tells us that this whole universe was formed from matter from that other realm. In Hebrews we read, by faith we understand that the whole universe was formed at God's command, that what we now see did not come from anything that can be seen. So everything that currently exists within the space-time continuum, this whole universe, everything that we can now see, actually has its origin in that other realm that we cannot see. We are a reality within a reality, if you like. Another question we can now answer is, how is God able to listen to and answer the prayers of so many people around the world simultaneously? Well, again, that question presupposes that God is constrained by time and that he exists within the space-time continuum and that all the prayers are therefore coming to him within time. But
you're just not thinking fourth-dimensional.
We have to think four-dimensionally. Being outside of space-time means that God is never rushed. In fact, God already knows the prayers that you're going to pray well before you do. He's already seen it. Jesus said, your Father already knows exactly what you need before you even ask him. You see, God has seen your entire life since the beginning of time. Before you were even born, he knew every day you would live, every prayer you would ever pray. He's seen your whole life from beginning to end before you lived a single day of it. There are things that are going to happen to you 10 or 20 years from now that you have no concept of, but God already sees it, he's already there, he's already in that situation, he's already got a plan in place. Remember, you saw me before I was born. Every day of my life was recorded in your book. Every moment was laid out before a single day had passed. This is also why God tells us so often not to be afraid about the future, because he's got this, he's already gone ahead of us, he's already there. He holds the whole situation in the palm of his hand. There's so much that can be drawn from this, and actually we're going to carry this on into the next few answers videos. We're going to continue extrapolating out information from this. But in the meantime, you may find yourself curious about that other realm. And that's natural. The Bible says God has planted eternity in the human heart, but even so, people cannot see the whole scope of God's work from beginning to end. So we have a natural curiosity about eternity, but unfortunately we just can't see it from here. We're drawn to the idea, but we just don't have the tools available to actually reach into that realm. And that's why it's a mistake to make a religion out of science. Science can tell us a lot of important things, but science can only tell us about how things behave within the space-time continuum. Science cannot reach outside of this universe into that other realm. The truth is that if we were to know anything at all about that realm, we would actually have to rely on a messenger to come from that place into our world to tell us about it. And when we read the Bible, we discover that's exactly what God has done. That God himself has entered into our universe, that which he created in the form of Jesus Christ. And when Jesus came to earth, he actually spoke continuously about what he called the kingdom. Through his teaching and parables, Jesus gave us great insight into this place, and furthermore, he invited us to join him in the kingdom one day, to actually join him in eternity. Now, if you haven't accepted that offer already and you don't know how to get there yet, then now's the time to find out. Time is pressing. You only have a certain window here in which to find out and respond. Don't go to your deathbed not examining what Jesus told us about the kingdom. Get a Bible, turn to Matthew and then read forward from there. It's that simple. Jesus tells us much about what that kingdom looks like, and he tells us how we can get there.